Hey everyone, welcome back. We are now into part two with author Ted Flynn, author of the new recent book, Garabandal, The Warning and the Great Miracle, the divine reset that will correct the conscience of the world. And we've already covered a good bit, Ted, in the previous video, and thanks for coming back on for this part two. We're going to get straight into those bookends, the main messages of Garabandal, the warning and the miracle. So please, without further ado, take it away.
Take
As
it away. Okay, we could start on what I call the bookends. There were many, many messages as we discussed earlier. So this show will get more into specifically what the two main messages are that are very, very prominent. And then we'll hit what the warning and the miracle are so we could be concise on that. In October 18th, 1961, these are what I call the bookends. The Blessed Mother said there's two messages. The Blessed Mother said many sacrifices must be made, many penances must be done. We must make many visits to the Blessed Sacrament, but first we all must be good. If, and focus on that word if we do not do this, punishment awaits us. Already the cup is filling, and if we do not change, we will be punished. If means it's a conditional punishment. So that's pretty clear there. And again, these main messages that are in Garabandal that are a thread throughout all of these. And I don't see the radical theology in this or radical philosophy or radical anything other than literally sticking to magisterial truth for the last 2,000 years. And these messages are about several things, but most prominently, they're about amendment of life. At all of the authentic apparition sites, the Blessed Mother always speaks about making an amendment of life. And so we have that. There's also a constant message about the supremacy of the Eucharist and the supremacy of the priesthood. And the girl said the Blessed Mother spoke about the priesthood continually. So that was the real first big message. And then in that word conditional if, that's a really big word, that word if. Rudyard Kipling actually even wrote a poem on the word if. And June 18th, 1965, as my message of October 18th, meaning 1961, has not been complied with and has been made known to the world, I am advising you this is the last one. Before the cup was filling, now it is flowing over. Many cardinals, many bishops, and many priests are on the road to perdition and are taking many souls with them. Less and less importance is being given to the Eucharist. So that is the type of message that gives clergy heartburn. It's not exactly a term of endearment. And when the Blessed Mother says anything about clergy in the history of apparitions, the clergy traditionally really are not that wild about it. And I have to think that this is one of the reasons, from a purely logical and reasonable standpoint, the clergy have been a little standoffish on this. And as remember, although I told you I didn't mix and match, this is very, very similar to the message of La Salette.
yeah,
And the people who know these messages, they can see that these things are not identical in words, but the tone and the message itself is very clear on intent.
hmm
So then I guess the other messages that are very, very well known is where she even said to continue the 65, you should turn the wrath of God away from yourselves by your efforts. If you ask forgiveness with sincere hearts, he will pardon you. I, your mother, through the intercession of Saint Michael the Archangel, ask you to amend your lives. You are now receiving the last warning. I love you very much and do not want your condemnation. Pray to us with sincerity and we will grant your request. You should make more sacrifices. Think about the passion of Jesus. So those are the bookends, in late 1961, October, and mid 1961. I'm sorry, late mid-June 1965. So these are very, very powerful message to say literally that clergy all the way from cardinals to your local priest are on the road to perdition and taking many souls with them. So how can that happen? That happens principally through teaching false doctrine and leading people astray. So there's also two other messages which are called the Nights of Screams, which I'm sure you've heard about and studied, being a Garabandal aficionado here. The first night of screams, there are two elements. There's the supernatural and there's the events caused by man's sin. Again, the major supernatural events will be from the hand of God, as it was during literally the time of Pharaoh. There will be no doubt whatsoever only God could do these, because there's also more of the corporal works and the corporal sin that is, due to man's sin that we bring on ourselves, like, for instance, wars and this kind of thing. Both nights happened at 10:30 p.m. The girls were shown in a vision that rivers would turn red with blood. The church would be persecuted and decimated. Its buildings will no longer exist as they once did. Professing your faith would be very difficult, and the sacraments would be difficult to receive. Now, this is me taking a break here. We know we're not there yet, where the sacraments are difficult to receive and the church is decimated. We know it's been a gradual diminution in the culture as well as the church to see this, but we're not there to where the mass is outlawed as it is in other parts of the world. But don't forget, in the West, we still have more general freedoms, although they're being chipped at day by day by day.
Yeah.
The girls were heard crying out, "Stop telling us those things. Wait, wait. Everyone should confess. They should get ready. When it appears all is lost, the warning will come." So we're not there yet. So for people, we're not there. And this is why I say you can see this closer. In one war or something could affect every single person in the world if whatever's going on goes nuclear, and right now either in the Middle East or Ukraine or Russia. And as I said, we just sent long-range missiles to Ukraine, and Putin said really early into the war that was a line in the sand if the United States did that, because those missiles could be right on the north border of Ukraine and could hit Moscow. So, and we just sent them over. So anything's possible here. So for some details of what they experienced were never divulged. Over time, certain things were divulged about the Nights of Screams over the next several years, but it wasn't written down exactly what they said then, but it emerged of what was said over time. The Virgin told us that we do not expect the chastisement, that without expecting it, it will come, since the world has not changed, and she has already told us twice, and we do not pay attention to her, since the world is getting worse, and it should change very much, and it has not changed at all. Prepare yourselves, confess, because the chastisement will come soon if the world continues the same. So that implies to me a chastisement's coming. Based upon that. That's not me any conjecture. That's the words right there, that a chastisement is coming because the world has not changed. Now, the second night of screams was on June 20th, 1962, on the vigil of Corpus Christi. And there was another vision that lasted for 3.5 hours. The girls saw destructive things happening in the world at a future time. Mary Lowly Mazan said, "We saw rivers change into blood. Fire fell from the sky, and something worse still, which I am not able to reveal now." 3 of the girls were shown the great chastisement of fire that would come if humanity reverts to its evil ways after the grace of the great miracle. So what that means is we've just had the warning and the great miracle, and the world hasn't received the grace and is reverted back to sin. Now, that is very, very possible. Jewish scholars like Maimonides in the 8th century, who was living in Spain, who's considered one of the great Hebrew scholars in world history, he talked about, we all measure, Moses going up to the Red Sea and raising his staff on the top of a rock. That's not the way Maimonides writes about it. The Lord pushed him all of the way to the very, very end through faith to trust, where Moses walked into the water literally up to his nostril, and only then did it part. So we can forget Cecil B. DeMille, winning a Lifetime Achievement Award with the American Film Institute, and go back more to some of the scholars. So the Lord is testing us is what it is, but we find out also that it was a matter of only 6 weeks in the desert before they were building a golden calf. So here 6 weeks. Now, mind you, you have these miracles in Egypt where they had been in bondage 400 years. So if you want to take a generation, if 15, 20, or 25 years, whatever you choose for a generation, that's a whole lot of generations of people literally making bricks for Pharaoh from straw and mud and pits. So, this grace is so stupendous that even the Hebrew people were making a golden calf in a matter of weeks after seeing all that the Lord had done for them. So is it possible man will go back to its sinful ways very quickly? The absolute answer for that is yes. It's very, very possible, even in spite of this great grace. Why? It's actually because people are not formed. If they haven't been formed in the faith, faith comes by hearing, hearing by the word. The longer a person is in the scripture, the more faith they get by studying it if they have the right perspective of what God is going to do. So is it possible man will revert back to their evil ways? The answer is yes.
Can I just, do you mind if I just interject for a second while we're on those 2 nights of screams with those messages? I mean, I'm no stranger to them. I mean, the second night of screams, that's no doubt, like you were just saying, this is after the warning and the miracle. But it's this word chastisement, because I was thinking there when hearing it fresh from yourself about the first night of screams, you do put it up as 2 elements of these nights. It's the supernatural and events caused by man's sin. Could this first night of screams and what it contains be a chastisement before the warning, like this tribulation period, or are both of these after the miracle?
Say that again. I'm not sure.
I kind of find that first night of screams with these events, the rivers running red and all that, that sounds like it could be the tribulation leading to the warning, although it's getting called chastisement. But then the second night of screams, the chastisement of fire falling from the sky, and again, I'm thinking Akita, but it's clear here this comes after the warning, after the miracle. It's almost like the first night of Scream fits before the warning and miracle. The second night of Scream fits definitely after the warning and the miracle. What do you?
Well, I see it's a continuation of the story. I mean, the first one wasn't as long. The next one was 3.5 hours. I think what they're seeing is the chastisement, not that the first night of screams had a certain amount of elements to it that would happen at a certain time. I see this as a continuation of the story of, rivers turning into blood and fire falling from the sky. This is part of the great chastisement.
And it's coming, all of that's coming after.
And these are absolutely supernatural events. But 3 of the girls were shown the great chastisement of fire that would come if humanity reverts to its evil ways after the grace of the great miracle. The girls were heard saying, "Oh, don't let this happen. Don't let this come. May everyone go to confession first." The girls wept, "Don't let this happen. Don't let this come. Forgive us. Don't let this happen." So, and then, so it's absolutely obvious that there are some supreme events coming in a preternatural, supernatural way if there is not an amendment of life in refusing to adapt to what has been the grace of the warning and the miracle. Because it clearly says these are after.
Yeah. Especially the second night is very, very clear, isn't it? Do you think it's still the same generation of people that would see this conditional chastisement because they were the ones given the grace? They're the ones reverting. So we're not talking generations into the future where the grandparents gave the stories and they've passed. It's nothing like Israel's history. This is going to be the same people that witnessed the miracle, the warning and the miracle, and then within a short period of time may revert back to their sinful ways. We're not talking long between all these events.
Well, that's why I say it's like three acts in the same play. I mean, for an adult to say, we know there's the warning and then there's the miracle in Garabandal. Other people, as we talked about before, say 3 weeks, 3 months, 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever. It is what it is. But what was said here is within a year. Now we have some dates here. We know the miracle is March, April, May, or June. There is the anecdotal stories that originate, frankly, with a woman by the name of Maria Sirocco from Pasadena, California, originally from Massachusetts, who knew Lowly and knew Lowly very, very well, and they have history. But you have a situation where on TV in New York, where Conchita was a young woman, because the host was from Ireland. He had an Irish brogue. It was called The Late Show in New York City, and she's never been one out there talking about a lot of this stuff. And I even asked her once in the mid-90s when I was in New York. I was supposed to have dinner. I was invited to dinner at her house many, many years ago, and I called her, and it was a snowstorm coming, and I said, listen, I have to cancel because I've got a train back home, and as much as I'd love to see you, I don't want to be spending Christmas at your house because I'm stuck in snow here with young kids at home. And so she has a certain element of time where she knows exactly the day of the miracle. It's Lowly who knew the year of the warning. And we can piece together here that when she was on that interview, she specifically said March through June. So, so a lot of people say, I've seen March, April, May. And, the stories, everybody's expecting it in April. We can go over some of the aspects in this show of what specifically has been given for the dates of the time frame and the data point specifically for the miracle. But let's face it, if it's between the 8th and the 16th for the miracle, and let's just say already mathematically, we've already passed the month of April for this, and realistically, we've absolutely come to 99.9% sure we've passed also through May of this year. So when the warning happens, and we know it's between the 8th and the 16th for those who want to go there, and then there's going to be an 8-day notice by Conchita, you can piece together pretty quickly what's happening. If it hasn't happened in March, now you're looking to April, and if it hasn't and the warning has already happened, and it hasn't happened in April, then you're in May. And so, it's with each passing month, where you stand, your odds decrease mathematically.
Okay.
On a calendar. So we have data points. And I guess if do you want to get into some of the aspects you mentioned of the warning of what they are?
Yeah, sure, if you'd like to.
Yeah. I've spoken, I think I could tell a couple of stories to help people understand how profound. I knew a man who, there was a very famous movie in the United States called The French Connection. It was with Gene Hackman as a guy named Popeye Doyle. It came out in the 70s, and I think it was the early 70s at that. He was a New York detective investigating drugs coming in from Marseille, France. And so they thought it was coming into the body of cars. And I knew Popeye Doyle's gumshoe partner, who had been his partner in New York City as a cop. And I met him after all of this stuff. I didn't know him then, naturally. But he went down to the boat culture in Miami where they were with drug enforcement agencies, the agency. And so what he did, he started getting involved in a lot of that culture of I don't think he ever took hardcore drugs, but the drinking and the boat culture and everything comes with it. He experienced the warning in his life. He was 6'5", about 280 pounds. He was a monster of a guy, big barrel-chested guy. And he hadn't been a good father. This is his own words. In his public testimony. He hadn't been a good father, a good husband. And after he experienced the warning, he ended up on his kitchen room floor for 5 hours and couldn't get up. In total remorse. Think of like going through your iPhone to where you can go through your pictures really quick, and those that you want to see, you stop on a little bit longer, and then you can scroll through them extraordinarily quickly or as fast as slow as you want. So that's what the warning's like. It's like a motion picture. You'll see all sins of omission as well as commission. You'll see everything you did to hurt people with your words or your actions. And this is what he saw. He became such a changed man. He became a missionary. Now, I've met many people now, as many as, I forget now, 25 or 30 now over the last 30 some years that have experienced this, because the Thunder of Justice had 2 big chapters on Garabandal in it. And that became, frankly, the beating heart of the book over time. Because let's face it, these are sensational, as we talked about last segment. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And it's really hard to wrap your head around. So I've also met an individual who experienced the warning, and there was an amendment of life. And just with a certain amount of time, the person went back to their old ways because I saw it. And that individual had no formation in his life. And so, if you have some sort of formation in scripture, doctrine, prayer, spirituality, you're going to be much more open and receptive to this. Because what happens with a lot of these people with no formation, they don't have any fuel in the tank going forward other than what just happened. So it's very easy, I think, for love to grow cold.
Yeah, and I think that just reminds me of why our Blessed Mother says, like in Medjugorje, don't wait for the signs, don't wait for the miracle, because for many it'll be too late. And I think this preparation period, praying and fasting, etc., loving the messages, like you say, that's the formation. That's what's getting us through.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the people following this now, as we talked about, as the tribe of Issachar, we understand the times in which we live. I'm going to tell you a funny story. My son, we always talked about this in our house as kind of, dinner type talk. And we were at Mass. He was about 14 years old. And, you get the people who just go to Mass at Christmas and Easter, and the church is always filled, etc. So we were at a Mass completely packed, and a woman right at consecration, right in front of us, pulls out a compact. And she's got a little mirror, and she's putting on lipstick right at consecration. And my son turns to me, he says, "Dad, I don't think she's from our tribe."
Well, earlier in the first video, you've just reminded me when you were going through all the tribe names, and I'm like Zebulun and ones, because at the school show, high school, everyone says I should have been Pharaoh because I was a big Elvis Presley fan. The only time I went to America, and part of it was to see Graceland 20 years ago. But I became Issachar, one of the brothers. And now that you've just said where Issachar is in the tribe, I've known the times that we're in and the videos that I do on the channel. I take that as a little sign that I'm on the right path, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's not an arrogant statement. It's not a proud statement at all. It's a factual statement. The people listening here, they know divine mercy. They've probably been to many apparition sites over the years, and maybe some more than others, and so you've been to Garabandal, I've been to Garabandal. Last time was 2017. And so we know that we know these things, and we can interpret the times in which we live. We're seeing these signs. Why? Because the people who have dull senses, they're unable to grasp the truth of the gospel because they don't know what it says and put it in its proper perspective and time, because they're illiterate to it. They just simply don't know these things. They're not dumb, but they're ignorant. You and I we're smart on certain subjects, and we're very ignorant. I'm very ignorant in quantum mechanics. I'm not ignorant in this. I'm not saying I know everything there is to know, but I know a lot about it because I've studied it. And so those that have a formation in their faith are going to do a lot better.
Yeah.
And they're going to make the adjustment, because the warning is going to be devastating for many, many people who have lived a dark life. Those that have been in a state of grace, regular confession, maybe doing the chaplet of divine mercy, from Good Friday to Divine Mercy Sunday, where Saint Faustina is quoting Isaiah 1 from the Lord: "As your sins be as scarlet, they become white as snow." So those are forgiven. Will we see them? Possibly. But have they been forgiven on the promise of divine mercy? The answer is yes.
Yeah, I never
And we've confessed it. And we've confessed it. So it's not going to be as difficult for those who have been trying to live a more virtuous life versus a person who has been living a very dark life. So it's going to be much more devastating for those souls. And there's a lot of those people out there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah, it's a rude awakening that's coming. But how clear it is, I know the warning, El Vicio in the Spanish, but the illumination of conscience, how fitting that is for these times. Because is it Saint Pope Benedict once wrote, more or less, I may be paraphrasing when he was Pope, that one of the biggest crises in the world is an eclipse of reasoning. We've lost the eclipse of reasoning, and the idea of this illumination of conscience is going to correct it, bring it back in line. It's so fitting, and I can see why.
Oh, this is so profound. You frankly can't put it into words. I knew, I've known of a woman. There's different words for viso in Spanish. It could actually be also translated as notice. But viso in Spanish is more the warning, and that's what's used. That's the nomenclature that's used most by far. But there's the illumination of conscience, the correction of conscience. We also know that a lot of people who have NDEs, or near-death experiences, they speak about things like this. But in the NDEs that I've read, where they see their life, it's nowhere near as complete as what I read will happen in the warning. Because in an NDE, there may be people, there's thousands and tens of thousands that claim they receive it, and they go through this tunnel of white light, and et cetera, et cetera. And that could be some of it, but I think the warning is much more comprehensive. And the life review is another phrase, a life review. So the illumination of conscience seems to be one that gets the most verbiage on the entire subject. But the correction of conscience is what it is. It's correcting the conscience after it's illumined, and thus becomes corrected.
And
And
again, sorry, please go.
And don't forget, the warning is seen and felt. Something will be seen. We don't know exactly what that is. Now, I've got 3 or 4 pages in the book on what that could be. I don't make any predictions, i.e., I'm anathema to that, because I had a friend by the name of Malachi Martin, and in the mid-90s we spoke about this, and I've never forgotten it. I was in his apartment in New York, and he said the way, and he was very much a believer in Garabandal. And he was a very, very big Fatima guy. And
Oh
what
yeah,
was said there. And by the way, Malachi Martin is on the record with many statements in support of this. And he felt that, as he always said, God bless John the 23rd, but the message was to be released in 1960 for the world,
Yeah.
and that was Malachi Martin's opinion on it. And so, in a pretty knowledgeable guy, but he told me, he said, when these events happen, they won't be like you perceived them to happen. In other words, the way we're talking now. But when they happen, they will happen exactly as was said, but not as we think in our own mind because of our human limitations. And I never forgot that.
Phenomenal stuff. I've got a big smile on my face thinking God's ways are above our ways, just as the
That's
heavens
right.
are above the skies.
My ways are not your ways. And everybody making these predictions, will it be true? Maybe for some, yes, but maybe for others, no. But will it happen exactly as it was written from the Blessed Mother to the girls? The answer is yes, it will happen that way, but not as we think in our own limited, finite mind.
Ted, it's been very sobering so far hearing this because although I've never made predictions, I do see the numbers, I do see the patterns, I do hear the people try to say, oh, maybe now, and things. And I may have reported it in the past, but always keeping an open, calm observation, not to get into hysteria and whatever. But the more you're speaking here, the more sobering it is to know, like, forget it because it's still going to surprise us when it comes. It's very sobering. It's great to have you speak up.
Oh yeah, and I have kind of some talks that I've been giving over the last 5, 7 years with all of these predictions and everything, and the expectations and the up and down. And let's face it, a couple of years ago, an even-numbered year, which certain people have said in the same calendar year. Guess what? And they were supposed to be in the month of April. We've passed it. It's already gone. So you can't have this up and down of having your spirit elevated to such a level and then brought low, thinking God has disappointed you. We are called specifically to be believers and living the fundamentals and rubrics of the faith every single day and let the Lord do his thing. Our command for our salvation is to live obediently every day.
Amen. Amen. And I've just come back from pilgrimage again from Medjugorje, and see when you're there and the grace it helps you get into that deeper union with the Lord through the prayer and the sacraments. All this guessing, all this annual thing, it's like I could not care less. See when you're in that place he wants you to be in that union, nothing else suffices. That's the most important thing he wants is that unification with our hearts. And you'll understand people will understand more and more why the more they love the messages.
Well, you know the 5 stones of Medjugorje. I mean, that's what we're really talking about, the fundamentals of the faith.
Yes.
And so this is what's very important. I learned, I've been a fan of sports since I was a young boy. And whether it's the NBA finals, the Super Bowl, I don't, there's certain sports I don't watch, but I'll always watch. You got to watch the final game of whether it's the French Open, whatever. The NBA FIFA World Cup. And here's what happens, and this is important for people following these apparitions. This is very, very important. At the end of every single major world championship, pick a team, NHL, Stanley Cup Finals. They go in the locker room. Somebody goes in the locker room with a microphone and a camera. They stick it in the MVP's face and they say, here's what they say, 2 things. How did you guys get here? And here's the first thing they say. All the time. Notice any single time there's a camera in a championship team, men, woman, whatever. It's usually the men. And so the first question they say is, how did you get here? So that they say, as a team, every single day, let's say it's hockey, every single day we just practice the fundamentals. We skated to get in shape because the third period is where you get winded. Rather than taking a man out with a penalty where you end up in the penalty box for 2 minutes, where there's a 40% chance the other team will score when it's 5-on-4, historically about 40%. And then, so it's a 2-1, 3-2, 4-3 game, 5-4, whatever. So that a goal makes a big difference in a win or lose. And so we didn't do stupid things. We practiced skate, shooting, and passing. We practice the fundamentals. They always say this. We practice the fundamentals all the time. And there's a very, very famous football coach here in the United States called Bill Belichick with the New England Patriots. And here it's called the Belichick Way, where he told all of his players, forget about what anybody else is doing on the team. You execute your job. You do your job. There's 11 men on a football field. You do your men. You do what you're supposed to do and forget what everybody else and don't worry about them. You do what you're supposed to do. And that's how we win games. And it was known as the Belichick way. And here's the second question they say. Hey, listen, there's got to be something else. And here's what they say. They go, as a team, we just get along. Our wives get together before the games for a meal before or after, depending on the time. We go to each other's kids' birthday parties. And literally, I remember the Detroit Red Wings a number of years ago when they won a Stanley Cup under Bobby Bowman. And he said, it's funny you say that. As a team, 16 of us are going to play the courses of Scotland and Ireland in 3 weeks. In other words, we're going to go home and heal a bit after a long season. And 16 of us are going to play golf. Well, you know what they're really talking about without saying it? They like each other. That's community. And a lot of these teams have actually little habits. The Washington team plays hacky sack, which is like a little beanbag. They play it with their feet before every single game to loosen up. So what they were talking about, number one, is the fundamentals. We know what the fundamentals of the faith are. We don't do them. Number two, they were really talking about community. That, in other words, if you look at Proverbs, where it talks about the 7 things the Lord hates, and the last one is division among brothers. He's talking about feet that breed evil and tongue and everything else, and literally is as a person who creates dissension among brothers. So rather than creating disunity in a relationship, what these championships do is they focus in on harmony for winning. So that's what breeds national championship teams in every single sport in the world. Fundamentals and community happens when people like each other and support each other, and we need that in the Christian body right now, because no matter where a person is going today, all you hear is division. Pick a subject, and it was John the 23rd said unity on the essentials, liberty on the unessentials, love overall. Now, this is different for us if somebody is talking about heresy and false doctrine and fraternal correction. But there are a lot of people, frankly, who just look to be a pain wherever they go to project an opinion of something that, frankly, isn't really relevant to the time they're in, to make a point of pride. So this is what happens in the Christian body right now all over, and it's why there isn't the unity. Because everybody's got a little pet peeve. I haven't in my whole life ever argued with any single person ever about an apparition or scripture. I may have an opinion on it, but I'm not arguing with them. You don't win a disciple through argument. You win it through a friendship.
Yes.
And that's the art of discipleship. Why? Because when Jesus came into the world, he had an agenda to only do one thing, and one thing only, and that was the redemption of mankind, to change hearts. That was Jesus's sole mission, was to change hearts through truth. So as even Gandhi said, the truth if spoken by one is still the truth. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to argue with people. You just project the truth very quietly, simply, truthfully. And you don't win converts through arguments. I'm into Marian apparitions for sure. My personal love is scripture. It's where I spend by far most of my time. And I love it. Mm-hmm. And when you know the real dollar bill, you can always spot a fake. Yeah. Right? You can always spot a counterfeit. So there's a higher agenda taking place here through what heaven is doing. and it's very, very significant. And the Lord is asking us, we know the fundamentals of the faith: Mass, Rosary, prayer, confession. We know what they are. How many people listening to this, 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week, whatever it is, how many people go to an hour of adoration a year? A year.
Yeah.
But you know what they're doing all day? They're frankly watching podcasts all day long, and they're not sticking to the rubrics of the faith.
Mm-hmm.
They're filling their head week after week, month after month, year after year with information. Are they doing corporal works of mercy? Maybe, maybe not. Are they in prayer? Is there a daily rosary? What's being asked? That's what Garabandal is asking for first and foremost. Not these sensational messages, but an amendment of life. And that is very, very critical to what Garabandal is speaking about.
Absolutely. You must live good lives. Think of the passion of Jesus. It
That's
doesn't
right.
get more personal than thinking through the passion of the Lord, what he did for you. That's
Right.
Do you want to continue on with that part? Are we ready for the miracle part?
The warning's pretty much what it is. We talked about just a few examples, but what's the reason for the warning? The primary reason is to correct the conscience of the world. But if we want to get into maybe what the aspects of what the great miracle are, we could maybe close on all of this. And maybe the best thing is to just hit them pretty quick, because there's quite a bit of information as data points specifically on what the miracle is. We know it's for the conversion of Russia, where the Blessed Mother said, all will love our hearts after the miracle. All will love our hearts. And it's for the, now we know at Fatima was specifically about Russia was mentioned, and specifically Russia was mentioned at Garabandal, which is very interesting. It didn't say Islam, it didn't say China, it didn't say anything with the Persian Gulf, it didn't say the Arab nations, or it didn't say Kiev. It said specifically Russia. So that's kind of interesting. And she said the miracle will coincide. It's an interesting word, coincide with an event in the church. Now, could it be the synod? Maybe. Could it be the fifth Marian dogma? Maybe. We don't know. It has to do with a major church event. Now, in Spanish, there's the word and what that really is, but it also, where there would be, now this is profound, the reunification of Christians. Whoa, the reunification of Christians. Now, we knew the East and the West split in 1054, nearly 1,000 years ago. And do you know when that document was actually signed? I did some research on it. July 16th, 1054, the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting?
That's how she appeared. That's the miracle of Fatima. People never speak about her multiple appearances at the miracle that the children saw at Fatima, one of which was Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Then again, she came as Our Lady of Mount Carmel at Garabandal. There's something, a reason for that.
Well, it's interesting. Do you know that I've been very, very surprised over the years, and I have this in the book, that the children at Fatima actually received the warning. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
They received the warning. It said where they saw their life as a mirror. Now, minding you, these are country kids, just the way the girls were, of how they interpret it. They saw their life literally as in a mirror. So that's an interesting thing. But then again, the Protestant Reformation now in 1517, so we're now over 500 years ago. But whatever this is, it's the reunification of Christians. Now, the Christianity was never united with Islam, and was never really united with the Hebrew culture. It's an extension of Hebrew, as you know, but the reunification to me would imply something to do probably with either the Protestant Church due to the Reformation, or literally East and West in 1054 of Latin Rite and Roman Rite versus Eastern, which I think there's 22. I always forget 22 or 23 Eastern Rite. I'll probably get a text on saying that wrong as soon as we're done. But it's a description of a great event in the church, which is a bit of an exaggeration because the way it was spoken about, the actual phrase in Spanish, without getting into it, spoke about in translation a particular event in the church or a specific event in the church. Now, what that is, take your pick, you know. And it's for where, as I said, the miracle is for the conversion of Russia, where the Blessed Mother said, all will love our hearts. Now, listen to this. It's the definite article, the. It will be the greatest miracle ever performed by Jesus for the world. It will be supernatural and has never been seen before and will not be explained by science. Padre Pio will see the miracle, which we know he did before his death, and he told people about it. The reigning Pope will see the great miracle from wherever he is. Before the miracle, something will happen that will cause people to stop believing in Garabandal. The miracle, now you're getting into more specifics. The miracle will occur on a Thursday evening at 8:30 p.m. Spanish time, and it will happen between the dates of the 18th and the 16th, inclusive of those dates, March, April, May, or June. It will be on the feast of a young Eucharistic martyr of a feast day of a young Eucharistic martyr, It will last, we've heard, anywhere from about 15 to 20 minutes. It will be seen in the sky. It will be possible to photograph and televise, but not touch it. All those in the village and the surrounding mountains will see it. The sick who are present will be cured. Think of this. And I've had many people ask me over the last number of years, do you have to be there to be cured? And the answer to that is, I don't know. I can only say what was said here. The sick who are present will be cured. I think the word there is present. But think of a person who's dying and everybody in medicine knows it, the hospital, a family, relatives, neighbors, a trial for a family, and they are brought to Garabandal and they are brought home healed. Do you know how profound that's going to be?
Yeah.
And in 1994, my wife and I and my in-laws, we had a meeting with Seraphin, Conchita's brother, in his home there, and we ended up talking about the miracle. And he said something to me very interesting that I've never forgotten. He said, at the time of the miracle, he said it will be very difficult to travel here. So I haven't seen that in any of the messages, but yet he told me that.
I've seen it pop up through the Garabandal sites and talks and all the rest of it. And again, your book focuses on what the kids were saying from the 60s, but I've heard that before.
Yeah, so in other words, it's pretty, so it's going to be difficult now. And in 1994, when I heard it, is it war? Is it a virus or whatever? But we know now, is it jet fuel? What could it be? Again, pick your poison there. But I think for the most part, now that we've just gone through COVID and seen the strength of the World Health Organization, of how, unelected people are actually, governments are ceding control, sovereign governments are conceding control to NGOs and that kind of thing. So, could it be now through some sort of virus or epidemic or pandemic that's far worse than what we just had with COVID? And so, again, who knows?
15 and all sorts. Yeah, please continue. I'm just adding to the list.
Yeah. Conchita will announce the miracle 8 days in advance. And we know that we've been told that the miracle will be Eucharistic and it will be Marian, which is very, very interesting. So, there's quite a bit of data points there.
Yeah.
And then we know, and Conchita said, the miracle will not delay in coming. And she said, although it is taking time, it will not be late. God's time is always the appropriate time. So that gets back to me, what she's saying and I'm saying. Let it happen. Live your life every day. Be diligent to your station in life. Be responsible to your spiritual responsibilities, and do every day and follow the rubrics of the faith. And the more you think about another person's problems, frankly, the more yours go away, which is just exactly why corporal works of mercy are necessary. And then we know after that, there's going to be some sort, after the miracle, some sort of permanent sign left at Garabandal. And there is not a lot of data on exactly what that is. Now, Conchita has said a permanent visible supernatural sign will remain at the Nine Pines until the end of time. You know, this isn't the end of the world, it's el fin de los tiempos, the end of times. So, you know, that these things, so detractors and skeptics try to say, oh, you're always talking about the end of the world. No, it's the end of an era, in the exact same way that up until Jesus, people that were following Mosaic law, and Jesus brought in a new redemptive plan, and since then we've been following that. And the Blessed Mother is the prophetess of our times for our age, and has been appointed by the Blessed Trinity. She's not a loose cannon on board ship. As Moses delivered the people out of Egypt, and Jesus went to the cross for the redemption of man, the Holy Trinity has appointed the Blessed Mother for this role at this point in time, as the ark of safety, as she is the refuge right now. She is the ark of the new covenant. That's who she is.
Yeah.
So that's really it on the miracle, and I think we could be running out of time as well.
Yeah, I'm thankful for your time yet again, uh, Ted, and yeah, the Ark of the Covenant, the timing where she done with old calendar, all that stuff's there, the significance, the symbolisms, the dates. There's so much stuff in a way that heaven keeps a lot of it subtle, but the messages were very blunt. And all this time, it's about love, mercy, trusting God, hope for the best, and that preparation. We've been given everything. And I think it's been very sobering to hear your input and your delivery on things, especially because the association with Garabandal is always about people thinking, is it this year, is it next year, and all this, holding on to little things like the even year and working out the months. And I think you've delivered it in a very sobering thought and had a real focus on the whole point of why she appeared there and what the messages were that were delivered. And we're seeing things, it's, to me, it's becoming close. You know how you get the harvest and the darnel there? You're starting to see it coming at the point now the harvester has to come. You know, things have to get separated, the sheeps and the goats. And it's the case of this is the chance where we're getting to decide for God or not for God. It's all or nothing. And I've had a very clear conviction for several months and a renewed way of that conviction. It's all or nothing. And we've got everything we need to become great saints of this century and some of the greatest saints in the history of the church. This is the great time to be in. Are we answering the call? You know,
Oh,
so
we're in game time.
oh
We're
yeah,
in game time. The confluence of events everywhere are actually pointing in this direction. As I say, we're not there, but on the other hand, when you wake up tomorrow, be surprised about nothing, and that's where the events could gallop and really escalate and accelerate very, very quickly by a single event. And don't forget, it seems as if the world is in a very, very bad state at the time of the warning. Now, in many parts of the world, that's exactly the way it is. But that's not that these aren't the supernatural events that have happened yet either.
I think the West still need to go through a bit more of its own suffering because we're always seeing the suffering from the television point of view, what's happening thousands of miles away. I think it's coming to us first, and that's why we need to prepare spiritually more than ever. for whatever's to come. But God's stepping in to save the day. Let's remember that.
The words we've been talking about: love, mercy, trust, hope. This is God's DNA.
Yes,
This is who God is, and He is not going to leave the remnant out to dry. And as I say, there'll be nobody left standing unless God moves shortly.
perfect. I'll take that as your final word, unless you've got anything else to add, because I know you've got another meeting to head.
I do.
So I just want to say thank you again for coming on, and the door is always open to you. I think you and I have got many hours over a beer or a good scotch, as you would. We've got,
I'm not a Scotch guy.
that's fine. I'll drink the scotch.
I've given some really nice bottles away. I think it's about the same thing as drinking jet fuel, which I've never done that either. I don't know how people like it. I know you're Scottish, but I never developed a taste for it, thank God.
Oh, I don't know if you thank God for it right. No, but it's great having you on, and please God, we speak again soon. And for everyone else, remember, links in the description for Ted's book and where to buy it, his website as well. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and cast the nets for other souls out there that need to get these messages in the time. And until next time, take care and God bless.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine.